Welcome, one and all, to the K.O.E. Nation, folks. It is I, the man of the hour, the man with the power, the man that makes the other podcast cower, the prince and potentate of the political parlance, the lord of the Scottish Highlands, one handsome man if I do say so myself, your king of extreme, Phil K.O.E. Welcome back. It is great to be back, folks. My goodness, it has been quite a hiatus, but folks, it was necessary because I, as the king of extreme, as many of you know, have the Prince of Extreme upstairs who's getting ready for bed because the Queen of Extreme is putting him to bed. So, but folks, this is all necessary. But we also this evening have a very, very special guest, folks. He is an attorney so good. He's an attorney so good that he could get light fishing with hand grenades reduced to just lighting off fireworks before the 4th of July. He is one of the finest attorneys in all God's creation. He is the man for you, the man from wearing the hat of BYU, the one, the only Nate Dallon. How we doing, sir?
Phil, as is always the case, your intros should just be the show. I mean, I think we can shut her down now. It's all downhill after that introduction. I'm doing well, Phil. It's been far too long. I think the last time we talked, your hair was a slight different color, and I had a little more than I do now. I think that the years and the tread is starting to wear on both of us, Phil, which is all right. That's how life's supposed to be.
Yeah, oh yeah, we're falling apart. We're losing the warranty on all of our parts, basically. Yeah, like I kind of joked that like I have the placebo effect of hair. I can like kind of lie to myself that there's hair there for maybe a few more years. It's like I'm about ready to tap out to glasses. I can lie to myself about these for about another year, where I don't need them all the time. But we're getting there. We're getting there. But well, Mr. Dallon, how have you been, sir?
Well, things in my world are a booming. So what Phil failed to mention is my area of specialties,
I was about to say,
speciality
to the folks at home who may not know you.
Yeah, I'm an immigration attorney, and I don't deport people. I try to keep them here. I try to get them work permits and social security cards and green cards and citizenship and the whole kit and caboodle. So that's my area, and I think everyone can agree I'm on the battlefront of something. However you want to describe that battle, I'm right there in the trenches. And so things are a booming. I started my own shop back in 2021. I've been doing immigration work from 2014 till 2021 with another guy. And then a couple of us peeled off, started our own place, and we're off to the races. Never been a time in American history to be as hopping in the immigration land as right now.
You know, I was about to say, like, when it comes to Trump, you're not sure if he's going to be cutting in on your gig or giving you job security from day to day. You know, it's got to be a little like that unsureness has to be. Well, I suppose the unsureness would be a level of job security anyways.
No, that's right. I mean, people say things like, well, what does this mean for you? And the answer is things go up, things go down. It ultimately doesn't matter. We're able to do things anyway. I had sent Phil a couple of graphs. We don't need to look at those right now. I mean, we can pull those up later if you want, but I'll just tell you today, well, as of the end of 2023, the U.S. Census Bureau thinks there are 24.5 million non-citizens living in the United States. So now I don't exactly know their count on that. I think that includes green card holders and visa holders, right? So not everybody in that 24.5 million is illegal, but a fair chunk of those folks are illegal. You've heard different numbers, but the Census Bureau sort of agrees. It's up there. It's not a small number. And then, of course, a lot of those folks are married to citizens, have citizen kids, a bunch of other things are going on. And so just the population that we're talking about is so big. I think that's what really gives me job security. And then policy then just becomes, the flavor of the day. I mean, even the Democrats would whipsaw me all the time as to what we're doing. For a while, it's incredibly loose. Then for a while, it's incredibly, strict. I kind of think that we might see something similar. I don't know. You can tell me if I'm wrong about this, Phil, but I actually think that President Trump is going to be able to declare more or less victory on the immigration question. The border, as you tweeted at me a few days ago, has reached probably a 2-decade low. I don't know if the border's been this quiet in the last 20 years. It's basically silent. maybe you could find a time like in the 60s where it was even quieter.
I was about to say, like, I gotta give like Tom Homan has somehow figured out a way to just be the border. Like, okay,
Yeah.
terrified everybody so much that like at my son's dedication, somebody who was dating somebody from my wife's family, he's from Scotland. And this guy's worried. Okay. Like he's like, I don't know if I'm gonna be allowed to stay or not. Like, it's like, what?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, I didn't know the worry was quite that deep there. But yeah, Tom Hammond, like when I listen to that guy talk, I'm like, woo, boy,
Yeah.
I'm glad I was born here. Otherwise, I'd have to deal with this guy. Oh my god.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, just think for a minute though. So the border goes completely quiet. Let's assume that President Trump and Tom Homan continue to just roll for the next 18 months, and they really find all the bad elements out of the immigrant community and expel them. Let's just assume that the mass deportations occur over the next 18 to 24 months. Let's say by midterms, you can really declare like, all right, guys, we did it. We found basically all the bad elements. I don't know how many deportations that'll end up being. Let's just give it a number like 900,000, a little shy of the million that he's talked about. You say like, we've deported 900,000 people. The border's been basically quiet for 2 straight years. What is Captain Art of the deal? What's his next move? Like, to me, it seems pretty obvious that the next move is we got the bad ones out. The good ones are here. Let's try to figure out some sort of non-citizenship path so that all these folks can come out of the shadows, work on farms, work wherever, and live their lives. And we're going to be just fine. I could be wrong about this. I know that there are some Magistanians who kind of feel that a bigger round of expulsion and then anything that even sniffs of amnesty is just a total non-starter. But I mean, you've heard Trump, Elon Musk and some of these guys, they kind of talk like, once we clean house, we're going to extend a bunch of green cards, right? And so I'm just interested to see what happens. I tell my clients, look, if you're not one of the bad ones and you can survive 24 months, situation could change real quick.
That's it. So basically, like, all right, you just gotta hunker down and get past the midterms, is what is generally made. Because
I really believe that. Now, the thing that would blow this up, Phil, is if more Tren de Agua, more cartel activity on the American side of the border, that could blow that up, right? If Trump can't sort of declare victory and say mission accomplished, well, then the mission's not accomplished. But if we get to the point where the number of criminals, the number of cartel people walking around the country really does start to bottom out, and then the number of people crossing the border remains crickets, well, then I think that Trump's instinct is declare mission accomplished, start moving towards getting these people into some sort of legal status so that they can work and whatever, and then set up a new immigration system for the next 100 years. I mean, he's in a position where if he wanted to do something like that and sort of set policy for the next 4 generations, I think he could. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I think that is a more likely scenario than many people want to admit.
Because like I could see that, because like the hardcore MAGAs wouldn't be all that happy. The hardcore Democrats aren't going to be happy that a single person got deported. And then basically, depending on how brutal the midterms are one way or another, Trump's like, well, okay, since we've got divided houses here, because let's be frank, from what I'm looking at, if you made me bet a silver dollar on it, okay, on how the midterms are going to go, the Republicans are going to quite easily hold on to the Senate. But the House, look forward to very slim House elections for the foreseeable future.
I agree.
Like, it's just going to be so if the Democrats take the House, they're going to definitely be wanting some sort of like that. You got to give them something to go back to their people.
And actually, Phil, you could take this even farther and say inside of the Trump coalition, if that's even the best term for it, because I actually think this coalition will outlive Trump. I don't think it's actually unique to Trump in the person.
Yeah. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. To me, I think there's actually a lot of connective tissue, even though the two people don't really like each other all that much, between the Ron Paul love revolution and Donald Trump's election in 2016. Okay. I think there's a lot more crossover there. And
you could say it even more strongly, Phil. You could say something to the effect of what are the principles of the Trump, of this current movement? We could say it's patriotism, right? It's America first. I think that has to be one of the pillars. Maybe it's not number one on the list, but it's not number one. It's number two. Number two would probably be a cultural movement, right? The cultural movement piece to this is harder to describe in just sort of a few words. In some ways, it's easier to describe as what it's not, right? And so it's not elite. Some people like to call it populist. I don't even know if that's the right term, Phil. Like, I don't know. If you crack open your daughter's American history book and it talks about populism, I don't know if this moment qualifies. But instead, it might be a cultural movement that is against our current version of the elites. We don't like elites who forget what gender is. We don't like elites who are anti-patriotic in the way that we teach at school. We don't like elites who are anti-God. We want to feel more comfortable in our faith, right? Like, I don't know how to describe that, but to me, that's not just populism.
It's a rejection of the modern secular order.
Yeah, right. So again, maybe defining it in what it's not is the better way. Because if I just said it's sort of a wave of traditionalism, well, I think that's somewhat true. I haven't seen the Catholic conservatives and Catholic evangelicals be on the same side, hooked arm in arm to such a degree, but it's because of what you just described, right? I mean, the papists are hooking up arms with the evangelicals because really the moment is calling for a rejection of not just a secular state, not just a secular culture, but almost an atheistic secular culture, right?
Yes. Well, it's the idea that all the religions are allowed to exist in this marketplace, if you will, where your ideas can be indulged, but no more than your own personal ideas, and they can't ever affect the secular society, which does hold complete sway, which has been the case for our Western order ever since the end of World War II. And so it's been sort of a rejection of that entire system. Not like you said, like you've got Catholics and evangelical. I mean,
even the Mormons are coming along.
Doing some research. To borrow a term, creedal Christians are all locking arm and locking arm together. Yes, I have been doing my research. But yeah, they're it's when you got those two groups together, you have a voting block. You can win elections with just that group.
No, that's right. And so if you mix a little bit of America first, a little bit of this new cultural moment, and then I think that the third rail to this would be working class Americans. And when I say working class Americans, what do I mean? I mean farmers. I mean folks who work manufacturing. I mean folks who work in the service industry. So I'm talking, if you just pull up to a random McDonald's employee, are they team blue or team red? They're team red.
Yep.
You know, Team Blue has promised a lot of things to working class people for our entire lives, Phil. And frankly, have they delivered? No. So you have this America first, this cultural movement that's harder to describe. You have this working class block. And Phil, guess what? Immigrants love all three of those categories. I mean, I've said this for a long time. Where was the biggest explosion of Trump support of any demographic group in the country from 2016 to 2024?
Hispanics.
What's number two? It's the Black church. The Black church has slowly been waking up and they are leaving team left. And guess what? If you just go look at illegal immigrants, there have been a few people with the audacious project of asking illegal immigrants, if you could have voted, who would you have voted for? Phil, who wins that election?
The Donald
wins that election. The people love him, and he actually loves them back. The problem is that the illegal immigration problem, the southern border, runs counter to these three pillars. Well, I guess pillars 1 and 3, as I've described them, right? So it's not really America first because a lot of these folks send remittances back to home country, like they cause a lot of problems for America first policy. And arguably, although I would argue it's overstated, the working class people do not appreciate being undercut with their wages. I believe that's a real phenomena, but I think it's way overstated. I think it's far more subtle than people realize. But nonetheless, they are on rails 1 and 3. They're against the project, but they're all in on rail 2. Go find me a blue-haired, left-wing, Hispanic working out in a field. They're going to look at you and say, I'm for the Virgin Mary, right? They're creedal Christians overwhelmingly. And even inside of the Islamic community, so your Muslims, even though there's a lot of things we could talk about there about assimilation and other things, but even inside the Muslim community, they were not showing up for Team Blue, right? They're not showing up for Team Blue. They are antithetical in culture to Team Blue all the way. Now, they might also be antithetical to the creedal Christians. I mean, I want to be very clear, but at least for the moment, no matter who you look at, Asian Buddhist immigrants, who are they voting for? They're voting Team Red. I mean, so my point is that from Trump's perspective, if you can get the immigrant community, the border sealed, you can get all the bad elements out, and you can fix rails 1 and 3, bring some unity there. I think the immigrant population is actually part of the future for the current political movement. That's one of my radical takes.
Well, it will, in my opinion, that analysis will bear out, because I can't remember who dropped the stats, but they were going over some of the swings of Hillary Clinton in 2016 for Hispanic males to Donald Trump in 2024. And it was like literally like 40 points pro Hillary to 15 points pro Trump, or even higher than that. And I'm like, that kind of swing is devastating for a political party. Like, the Democrats are just basically trying to figure out, like, what do they even do for the next 4 years? Because,
well, by the way, what do they even do is right. This is why Schumer looks like a deer in the headlights. This is why Hakeem Jeffries has just become an insult machine, but doesn't actually say anything. It's because for most of our lives, Phil, or maybe even all of our lives, probably. I don't know what year you were born. You're probably an Xer, so probably all of your life, and for sure all of my life. But I think that we're in a situation where the Democratic Party had a registration advantage nationwide over Republicans, right? The working class in the early 80s until 2016 were solidly Team Blue, and had been even before my birth. That has started to change, and so now the Democratic Party has become the party of what? Neocons, the educated, and the wealthy. That's who's running that party. And so working class people, they still have the language. They have this like faux language of working class people, but they are the elites, and they're running the party as though they're being run by elites.
Yeah, I mean, like what you described as their leaders, that's also the people who are voting for them. That's about it. Is, the highly educated, the moneyed elites and neocons. Okay,
that's
like
right.
that. Now, when I say highly educated, like I've often said that there are people that are educated beyond their intelligence. And we that may be a good chunk of that particular voting block. But in terms of the future for Trump, I think the midterms might be a little messy because Trump's not on the ballot. Trump's not really campaigning. Okay, but I think 2028, if Trump actually like nominates a successor and actually like gives his blessing to the next successor, that whether it be JD Vance or whoever it is, I think he's gonna just dominate whoever the Democrats put up, because Democrats, like, let me ask you, if you had to bet the house, who are they nominating in 4 years? Exactly.
I mean, the easy answer is Gavin Newsom, right? The easy answer is Gavin Newsom. But that's just because of process of elimination. Who else could do it?
I think on COVID, he's going to get trounced.
No, I agree. I'm not going to say he's going to win. I would just say that, I mean, we could probably go look at it right now on predicted and the betting odds. I bet they've got Newsom up at the top right now, but I'd give it like what, 15% confidence, like real low level of confidence on that. I'm with you. That party needs to figure out what its soul is, because getting back to this culture issue, the LGBTQ community will still overwhelmingly stay to the left. The atheistic when I say educated, what I mean is the degree crowd, right? The folks who have degrees. I think it is actually a little bit pejorative to talk about the educated and the uneducated like they're part of two parties. Well, that kind of presupposes that the uneducated aren't smart or don't know what they're doing or something. I don't even like that. But the folks with all the degrees and the LGBTQ community and the atheistic community and some of the people who have really benefited from globalism, they're all going to be inside of one party. And the neocons, right? Let's say like security, the security state folks, they'll be in that party.
The folks who just love them some more. Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
and I think,
how did that, wait, before we go, I have to, Nate, how the blanking blank did that happen where in our lifetime we went from the Republicans being the warmongers that almost led this world to ruin because of all the wars they wanted to start, to being the peaceniks and the Democrats going from the anti-war left, and that evaporated the day Barack Obama got elected, and now they're the saber rattlers that are about to plunge us into World War III. How did that happen?
Well, the cynical response is there was never a peacenik party until Donald Trump. How many wars did the Democrats actually stop? Hillary Clinton voted for Iraq. The Democrats voted for Vietnam. The Democrats voted for like the Iran-Contra stuff eventually, right? Like it's one of those things where they would vote for it and then held press conferences about how terrible it was. Like, okay, was that really a serious peace movement? That's my question to you. I don't think that it was so much a change. It's just that the scales fell off. The people who are most interested in stopping wars abroad is the working class. So the working class got a lot of lip service from a party that wasn't actually interested in those things. I mean, Bill Clinton, how many air raids and troop deployments did he do without congressional authority? Yugoslavia, Rwanda, isn't he the one who bombed a Chinese building in like Croatia? Like these are all things. He did the no-fly zone over Iraq, which was basically an act of war without permission. I mean, the entire Clinton Foundation has been profiteering off of the war machine. Like I think that the better question is that how come the peace community put up with being silenced and only be giving, tokens and breadcrumbs for so long? I think that's probably the real question.
Unfortunately, like a part of me really wants to agree with you, because when I saw the anti-war left just vaporize when Obama was elected, it's like, okay, was this all just a cynical, we want to go after Bush thing? Like a part of me is like, I think, yeah, probably to an extent was they just wanted something to go after Bush. And so their anti-war rhetoric was just that rhetoric. And that's unfortunately.
Yeah. They voted for the war and then complained about it. It's like, okay, well, that's a strategy that I think did work for many decades. So I guess I can't besmirch them, but
now we've got our new war that hopefully will be drawing down. And before we get kind of circle back to the border, since we're talking war here, Ukraine. I mean, like I know it's not exactly your area of expertise, but what's your general thought on that? I've been really curious.
So this is okay. Again, I have no special expertise. I'm not in on any phone calls. So I don't know. I don't know the personalities.
I don't know about that, Nate. They all call you. Don't.
Actually,
we know.
When people talked about this Signal texting chain and how it was a scandal, I said, the only scandal is I didn't get invited. If you're going to be inviting citizens into these things without security clearances, why wasn't it me? Why was it this guy Goldberg? That's the annoying part, is why wasn't it me? Why wasn't it Phil? If you're going to put some citizens in, Phil and I have things to say about this.
Yep. My favorite meme about it was Elon looking all sad going, wait, you guys have a side chat?
Okay, well, here's the problem as I see it. Certain countries are more stable as empires. So I'm going to say this again. Certain countries are more stable as empires. I'm going to give you one that's just, I don't think it's very controversial.
England.
The Persian Empire was more stable than Iran is stable today, right? So the Persian Empire is Farsi speaking. It was either run out of Tehran or Baghdad, depending on the time, but it was run by the Persian people, which is predominantly Iran and chunks of Iraq and a few other places. The United States and the Western powers specifically broke up that empire, right? Because they don't like a unified, powerful empire as a counterweight, and instead intentionally keep things chaotic to make sure that the balance of power is always on Team West. So that's what I believe has happened in the Middle East. The Persians, by the way, are not the only possible solution. There have been Arabian empires in the past, but same thing. They need more territory to be stable. Imagine for a moment, we're Nebraskans, Phil. Imagine if Eastern Nebraska and Western Nebraska really had a divorce. Both would be worse off. We would both be worse off for that. So the Western Nebraska folks, I know they feel a certain way about Omaha. I know that there are conversations around coffee and donuts on a Sunday morning that complains about the libtards in Lincoln and the purple-haired people in Omaha. I know. But if we're being honest about it, Nebraska as a contiguous state is better off with having both of us there. If we needed to defend our borders, splitting Nebraska in halvesies would be a disaster. No, what Eastern Nebraska could not defend itself. Western Nebraska could not defend itself, right? Lack of manpower to the west and lack of resources to the east. We need each other. We're more stable as this particular unit. If you're Iran and you're the Persian Empire, or you're Saudi Arabia, or if you're Turkey, those are the three historical powers in that region. You need to have a bunch of the geography in the fold in order to be stable. And the West has had an enormous incentive to keep those places unstable so that they don't have to have a huge military presence and fight big wars. They can just allow things to be unstable. Now, I think that's what happened at the breakup of the Soviet Union. So I think that the Soviet Union and Russia, the empire of Russia, is most stable when all of Ukraine, the Baltic states, chunks of Finland and Sweden, chunks of Romania, and even a little chunk of Germany, that geographic place is stable when it's under one regime. If it's not under one regime and it's broken up into little pieces, they're going to be inherently unstable. They're going to have a hard time getting along. They can't share resources, a bunch of other stuff. So if that's the case, now just go with this assumption for a minute. Again, I'm not super smart. People like to say that it was NATO encroachment that actually spurred Russia onto conflict. I think that's wrong. I think it was the moment that the wall fell and the West started splitting up the Russian Empire. It made all of those places unstable. The United States took some of those unstable pieces and flooded them with cash, free trade agreements, and security arrangements because they could not be stable on their own elsewise, right? So they push instability into Russia from the moment they win the Cold War. And now that the United States is starting to take a step back, in part because of incompetence, let's be honest, the prior administration wasn't super competent, invited a little bit of a conflict, right? While at the same time, the Trump administration is looking at this and going, why are we picking sides inside of a place like Ukraine when really there's no upside for us? If the Russian Empire reasserts itself, I could see why that's bad for Germany. But if it's a friendly Russian Empire to the United States, why is that really a problem? It costs us less, and heck, maybe we can cut a deal with Putin, right? So that's all the thinking on this. And so as the United States withdraws support from different regions of the world, the more natural, historic kind of situation in these geographic locations begins to reassert itself. So when you hear Putin, when he's talking to Tucker Carlson, when he's talking to his own media, he talks about the historic Russian Empire. He doesn't talk about the USSR, and he almost never mentions NATO. And that's for good reason. It's because if it wasn't Putin, I think other Russians would also say the world is a more peaceful and stable place when Russia is an empire versus when Russia is in little pieces and we're constantly in conflict with one another. So that's kind of my take. The United States is now, for the first time, reevaluating why are we shoving resources into these regions to maintain instability. Maybe it's time for stability. And I think that's actually Tulsi Gabbard's whole shtick. She's Team Syria because she thinks that a Turkey-Syria empire is the most stable situation for the Middle East. And it's not an Iran or it's not a Israel-led empire, right? So that's kind of my take on that. I don't know if you have. That was a lot of words. You can tell me.
No. I'll give my take here in just a minute. But Grow the Farm Up says, to be America's enemy is dangerous. To be America's friend is fatal.
Today it feels that way. That's true. I'll tell you, though, ask the Japanese. They've been our friend. They remain our friend. They're doing great. Like, it's not that complicated, I think. I think the Canadians and the Mexicans have screwed this up, but that's another aside for another day.
My take is a little more simplistic than yours because you also got to keep in mind that crowd psychology is a part of it, so you can't overcomplicate it too much.
Sure.
Because I always keep in mind that, economies, militaries, nations, those are all psychological engines. And my take on this is Russia's trying to go back to some version, and I said this the day of the invasion, that they're trying to go back to some version of Berlin Wall 2.0, where there's this little geographical spot, wherever it is doesn't really matter. Like where the spot is irrelevant. The fact that they just need the spot where we play political hopscotch around for 25 years. And they, in their mind, like in the Russian baby boomers' mind, they can make sense of the idea of that is the West being contained. They think it's like, okay, they're behind that wall, they're on the other side of that wall, the West is contained, they will move no further than that. And that's how, like, for, I mean, I guess another word for Russian baby boomer would be Soviet. But yeah, like that's how they would generally view that. And so it doesn't even matter if it's a facile piece of Ukraine, so long as it's just some piece that they didn't have before. And that's kind of why I see this war as sort of, not sort of, but it's really just not worth it. It's not been worth all the blood and the treasure that we've lost over it, because all we're doing is, like, we're fighting over a line on the map so people can have pride.
Well, I mean, I think that your position it tracks human psychology. I would just say that history indicates to me that if the war in Ukraine were to end tomorrow with the lines as currently drawn, that does not grant the stability I'm talking about, because the day after those lines are drawn, Russia does still not have access to European Union markets without heavy tariffs. They don't have access to Ukrainian population base, which is, or used to be until all this violence, slightly younger, right, than the Russian population. They didn't have access to easy grain markets in the Ukraine, right? And they still wouldn't after those lines are drawn. So to me, I actually don't think that Trump is correct on this. I think his instinct makes sense, and I think that his instinct is good. But I think that the actual truth of the matter is that Russia, in order to be totally comfortable in its own skin, needs a little more empire for the prosperity of its own people, and arguably for the prosperity of the people inside that empire that they're acquiring anyway, right? That's one of the things, is you have to remember there are a certain contingent of Ukrainians who are comfortable with being part of the Russian empire, right? Because in a lot of ways, they'll be better off. So that's the only thing, is that I do agree there's a psychological component to this. There's no question, especially now that so much blood has been spilt. The idea that we could just expel the Russians from Ukraine at this point psychologically is a non-starter. But I do think that if Trump were to end the war tomorrow, no more material, the Europeans create the war, the security guarantee. If I'm Putin, I say no to the deal. I'm ahead. I'm finally actually winning the war. The border has moved a little bit to the Russian advantage. And I think he'll be better off, and the Russian people will be better off with a little more gains. And so I don't think he's done. And I think that, from my perspective versus your perspective, I think the possibility of conflict in the future is still high, unless you rewrite the whole board. If you, Phil, were to say, we're going to end the war tomorrow, and we're going to kick a couple of these countries out of the EU and create a new trading bloc with Russia that doesn't require an invasion. It's like a free trade zone. And we remove all the NATO weapons from right off of their border, they'd be calm. That would be true. But that extra layer of necessity, I don't think those countries are giving that up to the psychology of the moment, kind of to your point.
Yeah. Now, here's the problem. Well, for those countries anyways, is
reality is the problem.
If America says you're going to do it, you kind of have to do it. It's like, that's like, welcome to the big boy games here. But to me, it's like, okay, I have a daughter that's almost an adult. Okay. And so I very much worry about, like, okay, is her and her generation going to get marched off because of this stupid Ukraine conflict that should have been solved a long time ago? And so when you're talking about, like, their stability and what's possible for stability, like, so basically what you're saying is either a few extra countries drop out of the EU and make a trading bloc, or Putin just takes over all of Ukraine. And those are about the only things that would kind of satisfy him.
I think that's right. I think that you've just nailed it. And by the way, sadly for Europe, they've never had huge long stretches of stability, because guess who to the West also needs those same lands to be stable? The freaking Germans. And the Germans right now, they've been pussies for like 40, 60 consecutive years. And that's because the United States more or less took the strong arms of Germany and put them in slings and have let them atrophy. But if Germany decides to kick itself in the butt, abandon ship on a lot of the stupid that it's been doing for the last 60 years, go back to its nationalistic roots, Phil, how many times have the Germans found a way to crack parts of the Russian Empire? The sad news is that I don't think Europe can be stable unless Uncle Sam draws the lines. And that's a sucky situation. And to your point, here's what I think happens if we just left Europe tomorrow. Russia would get back its empire over the next, give it 5 years. At that 5-year mark, Germany will have truly rearmed. They'll be scared pissless. And then they will rediscover German nationalism and fully rearm. At that time, they'll start licking their lips and saying, wait, I think we're actually really good at killing Russians. We're actually really good at this. We've forgotten it. We've been in slumber for a long time. And then they're staring at each other. And then you have the potentials for a nuclear exchange. Not a big one. I'm not talking about like Berlin and Moscow will get nuked. I'm talking about artillery shells, tapped with uranium, making the boom boom 4 times bigger. But then that's one more little step. We cross that threshold. We're using small nukes in the field. How long before we make a worse decision as people?
So wait, so this time in the seemingly never-ending war between Germany and Russia, this
The
time
Bavarians
around,
and the Ruskies.
the United States would be on the side of the Germans?
No, actually. So first of all, it depends who's in charge.
General Patton would be happy.
Well, that's right. The answer to your question is it depends, right? If Trump is in charge when all this stuff is happening, then he's going to do whoever gives us the best deal. So it's totally transactional in his mind. And by the way,
got the best real estate.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to get a Trump Tower in northern Russia, Moscow, and southern Russia, and in Kyiv. This is great. No, but all joking aside, right now, if you were to just take those 3 pillars we talked about before, which are America first, it's a cultural movement against secularism, and it is working class based. Who's a better natural ally, the Russians or the Germans today?
A lot of people would probably view that as Russia. In that, because
I think so too.
Now, I'll never forget, I read this on Twitter where somebody said, okay, as a German, I just want to be very clear that the world wants us to build a military, march across Poland, and invade Russia. I just want to write this down now in case there's any confusion in the future. Okay.
That's right. I mean, and if I were to criticize some of the things that Trump has said, this would be one of the criticisms. I would tell President Trump, if you are begging France and Germany to arm themselves to the teeth, then they will use their shiny playthings. They will also feel this impulse to reestablish empire, right? I believe that the United States more or less turned off imperialism for anybody but us. We were still working on a financial imperialism. We were working on a globalistic imperialism. Our imperialism was sort of the weirdest because it wasn't for the benefit of its citizens. It was just the benefit of its elites or something. It was like a very confusing kind of imperialism. But nonetheless, it was a version of imperialism. If we decide to turn off our own imperialism, there's sort of this vacuum that will be refilled by the Europeans. And doesn't stop there, Phil. You can look to Asia, you can look to the Middle East, and you have to start asking yourself the question, which empires will start to reassert themselves? I'll tell you what, the Japanese are real good at killing the Chinese. They're real good at that. And I'll tell you too, the Iranians and the Saudis, they're real good at killing each other. And the Turks are pretty good at ruling the Middle East. And so that's why history is such an important, little bit to this. You can kind of look back in time and say, what were the more stable, more prosperous empires in a state of nature without the U.S. dictating what's going to happen? History reasserts itself. That's kind of my take. Now, to get this back to, if you want to be a peace-loving American, you have luckily for the United States, we have a lot of options on the table. We can do J.D. Vance style isolationism. I believe that he is more on team, let the world burn. We just got to take care of our own. I actually do think Trump believes in a little bit of meddling. I think Trump has a little more, I want to go cut deals around the world. I want to be in the middle of all the action, right? He's got more of that kind of vibe to him.
I mean, the dude's trying to just take the Panama Canal, Greenland, and then out of nowhere, the Gaza Strip? What?
Right.
Yeah, you want to talk about some meddling. Yeah, that guy's
Trump has a little more of this like meddling kind of impulse to him. And I also think that other people around him outside of Vance. So I think the true hardcore isolationist peaceniks are Vance, Tulsi Gabbard, and the guy who looks like Voldemort.
Boy, you gotta be more
graduated from Duke. Stephen Miller.
Okay,
right?
yeah, there we go.
And then inside of the intelligentsia that's around Trump, you can throw in Bannon, right? He's all in for that. RFK Jr., I'm sure, is of the same mind, right? These guys are the hardcore, like, we are not interested in one American bullet killing one person without serious cause, right? But then on the other side, you got Rubio, right? You've got Bassett from the Treasury Department. You've got Hegseth himself. I think Hegseth has shown he wants America to be kicking butts. And you don't be kicking butts if you're doing nothing, right? So these guys are more willing to go out and be active.
I get the feeling that Hegseth is going to be the guy that's like, he thinks it's better to ask forgiveness than permission from the president. Like, okay, all right, Mr. President, let's say that we bombed this island here. How mad would you be? Well, why did you do that? Sorry. Yeah, it's always better to ask forgiveness and permission from him. Now, he's a Marine, and so it's kind of funny that like some of the people that like hate Trump, but they're in kind of the neocon camp of folks that I kind of follow on Twitter. He's like their, other than this text thing, he's like their one like shining light of hope in the Trump administration. Is like, oh, okay, maybe a little bit of neocon just kick butt goodness can make its way through. And I'm like, oh, okay, Pete, he's good, but he still serves at the pleasure of the president. So
no, that's right. Steve Bannon has said the most important conversations are going to be between these three factions inside of the White House. Steve Bannon is really leery of the techno oligarch guys. So we're talking Peter Thiel, David Sachs, Elon Musk, the PayPal mafia bros, right? They're kind of one faction of the party. And then there's still the militarily active in the world wing of the party. And then there's the true peace-loving wing of the party, right? And it's kind of broken up into those three groups. And Bannon thinks that the most important question for all of humanity, not just the United States, is which of those three groups is going to ultimately convince Trump and control policy. Because he thinks that it needs to be RFK Jr., J.D. Vance, and the peace-loving, America first, manufacturing, Christ-loving wing of the party. That needs to be who wins. It can't be the techno bros, and it can't be the guys who are still kind of war curious. And he thinks that's it. He's like, the only thing that matters over the next 4 years is out of those three groups, who's winning Trump's attention, who's winning that argument internally. And I find it to be fascinating. I don't know. That might be a little too simplistic, but I think there's some real insight there.
Now, to me, I'm kind of like between the peaceniks and the tech oligarchs. Like I don't mind either of them, just so long as the neocons are the ones who lose. Okay, like just so like guys, can we please work together?
On that topic, when you heard it was going to be Rubio, what'd you think? Be honest, Phil. Be honest. It's okay.
I was not thrilled when I heard about Rubio. I knew he was going to easily sail through the Senate, and he's Secretary of State, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Okay. When I was running for president, I realized that in order to be elected and allowed to keep my office, I was going to have to nominate the equivalent of Dick Cheney's floating brain in a jar at either the head of the DOD or the Secretary of State office. And so Marco Rubio is the fresh young face of Dick Cheney's floating brain in a jar. So I was like, okay, Trump, in order to not get assassinated, winky face, had to basically make it, you'll notice the bullets stop flying at him after that, shortly thereafter. So Marco Rubio was his olive branch to the establishment,
the necessary poison in the administration.
Yep. That's that. Like, well, they won't blow up the room when Marco's in it. So yeah.
Is he? Wait, are you insinuating that Marco's actually just a hostage in the White House?
I'm insinuating nothing of the kind, sir. But I see him as basically the olive branch of that neocon. Like they had to have a seat at the table, whether we liked it or not, because they're part of the party. Now, I'll never forget when my former co-host, he was one of those, I'm a moderate Republican and you guys can't win the election without me. And we totally won the election without any of them. It was hilarious. And it was like, and so I was like, well, okay, guys, we need to give them at least a seat at the table, but they don't need to have a big one. So Marco Rubio, I don't suspect he'll actually he'll actually sit all 4 years as Secretary of State.
Fascinating.
Like, I think he's gonna find some hole to plug himself in somewhere in politics, or he's gonna quit 3 years in and gear up for his own run for president or whatever. So he's transparently ambitious, to be frank. Like, God love Marco Rubio, but it's not hard to see his ambition is to be sitting in Trump's chair eventually.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, those are good thoughts. I'm interested in those thoughts. All right. So to sort of swing this thing back around, let's talk about immigration again for a minute. So, oh yeah. Okay. So Phil, there's actually a slightly different, weird, goofy looking graph that's called labor tightness. Do you mind pulling that one up?
Okie dokie.
Yeah. Here we go. There we go.
Labor market
tightness index. So this is an index from 2001 to the year of our Lord, 2024. Okay, so this is a goofy graph. What does labor tightness mean? Well, what this means is what's the unemployment rate plus the number of job postings versus the number of people drawing unemployment checks, right? So you take all that kind of data, you stick it together, and you try to put it onto a stabilizing index. So this doesn't give you raw numbers. This is just telling you directionally which way is the data going. So you're going to see a couple of things that are, in my opinion, very interesting, Phil. And then we're going to jump over to the southwest border apprehensions. So here's my thesis. So you challenged me on this topic, and you said open borders is a choice. That's a policy decision.
Yes.
And we have made the decision as a nation through the ballot to close the border. My response to that is human ingenuity trumps federal power every time. If people want to cross the border, they're going to cross the border. That's my thesis. Now, why is it then that we had this explosion during the Biden era? Because by golly, we had an explosion during the Biden era. Is that truly just happenstance? Is that my argument? Well, not exactly, but pretty close. It is actually pretty close. So if we look at labor tightness, this is what this means. Does the labor market demand more workers or doesn't it? So we can take a look. What are the hard years if you just want a job? Oh, look, there's a little financial crisis between 2007 and 2008. Things start to get bad. Things bottom out. What is that? Beginning of 2010?
Yep.
So unemployment numbers and the labor market was loose. We call this loose. This was the worst time to be entering the workforce in American history. Well, you might be able to pick 1933, which was the worst year for employment during the Great Depression, and put it up against 2009. So if you entered the workforce in 2009, it was brutal. It was so hard to find a job. It was even harder to find a good living wage. The people inside of politics at the time were saying things like, we need a $15 minimum wage. We need all this stuff. $7.25 is just not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. Well, Phil, slowly but surely, the labor market tightens and tightens and tightens until at the end of 2014, it starts to flip. Now, we could ask why. That's a fine question. If you want to talk about that, we could talk about my opinions on that. But nonetheless, I think that the labor market does, in fact, flip. And we go from there are too many jobs and a job surplus to the exact opposite. I think that finally, working class people start to get some power back. And now we need more workers, more workers, more workers. President Trump starts to pick up on the power of the working class people, but it's already been building for them. So working class people become Team Trump. Trump enters the office, and then he sets the record, Phil, in 2019 for the lowest unemployment that we had ever seen. In Omaha, we got down to 2% unemployment in 2019. Many believe that 2019 might have been the greatest economic year in American history. Wages were up. Everyone was employed. The rich were getting richer, and the poor were having the best wage growth they'd ever had, right? At least, not maybe ever, but at least in the last 60 years, in the post-World War II era. 2019 was, mwah. What did Trump constantly tell us? This is the best year for Black employment ever. And he was right. More Black men and women were employed with good, decent jobs in 2019 than probably at any other time in human history. And then what happens? COVID. The biggest self-goal in American history. We shut down the economy. Phil, what happens when you shut down the economy? A cliff occurs. So we create a totally unnecessary cliff. And the way that we tried to deal with it was by deficit spending and just giving everybody checks when they sat at home. Right? Well, once we lift all of these shutdowns, what immediately happens? We go back to trend. But now we go back to trend with a lot of money in our pockets and we create inflation. So suddenly wage growth goes crazy. And then Omaha sets a new record in 2022. We get down to 1.89% unemployment. It's the lowest unemployment measure in the history of our region. So the Minneapolis Fed is in charge of us. And they said, we've never seen a major metropolitan area have such low unemployment. If you were unemployed in Omaha in 2022, it's because you wanted to be. Right? There were job signs everywhere. And Phil, if the market demands workers, what does the market get?
Workers.
It get workers. And so if you go to the next slide or the next little graph that I sent you, we'll see the southwest border apprehensions. So this is a good measure, not a perfect measure, of how many immigrants are entering the country. This is the one. So what do we see? This chart starts in 2016. So as soon as we start to have this vacuum of needing more workers, the immigrants start pouring across the border. Trump makes this the cornerstone and central piece of his campaign in 2016, and for good reason. But Phil, what happened to immigrants crossing the border from 2016? You see a dip. Trump year one, he does create a dip. He should get credit for that. And he did do that. He made that happen. He gets all the credit in the world for that little dip. Could he hold on to it? No, he could not. Why did he do family separation and remain in Mexico? It's because the trend starts to reverse on him mid-2017. So by 2018, apprehensions are back up nearly to Obama levels. That's when he creates remain in Mexico. That's when he says we need to be more strict at the border, do family separation, all this other stuff. And then guess what? It continues to go up into 2019 because the market gets what the market wants. Government doesn't control markets. So more people come, more people come. We shut down the economy, Phil, and then what happens? No more immigrants. The COVID pandemic and the shutdowns told every Mexican we're closed for business. No one showed up because no one had a job. They couldn't get jobs. As soon as Biden comes into office, there's a lot of hot money because of the deficit spending. Market gets tight again, and it explodes until January 2024. Did Biden do anything different after January 2024 when all of the border apprehensions started to slow down? No, he'd ruined the economy, Phil. Biden is officially done wrecking the economy, and the first people to realize are migrant workers. And they say, oh, crap, the jobs are drying up. I'm not going to show up anymore. So when Trump rolls into office, he rolls into the weakest economy we've had in 20 years, and the border goes silent because the market is no longer demanding immigrants cross the border. If Trump fixes the economy, they'll start to come back. So that is my hot take for the day, Phil. Tell me I'm wrong.
Oh, you're wrong. Everything but the is, the ands, and the thes. Every word of it, my sir. No, I will say you do make a compelling case. I will say that. But when I say that our levels of illegal immigration are a chosen government policy, what I mean is what levels of friction are we putting up between somebody coming in and not? Now, a good example, I'm going to give this one as an example, Nate, is I guarantee you know more people who own a firearm than own a suppressor. Okay. Yes. Because with a suppressor, there's so much friction that most people, even like a gun guy like me, it's like, I'm not even going to bother because it's so much friction to even get it. Now, when under the Biden administration, when all you have to say is a certain set of words to the correct border agents, and we'll figure out in the next 15 to 20 years whether we're going to do anything about this or not. That's not a lot of friction. When Trump comes into office, more friction is introduced. Now, in 2020 here, that was a lot of friction that we introduced, Nate. We said, no, ain't nobody coming in. We don't care about nothing. We're closed for business. The border's closed. That's about as much friction as I can think of. And so you do make a compelling case about with Trump, he did actually have an increase despite the strictness of his policy. But then he cracked down on his policy, and you do see a downtrend. then COVID kind of like, unfortunately, COVID kind of messes up both of our metrics here because you could make the case either way. It kind of bolsters your point and it bolsters my point. It bolsters your point in that, well, the economy was crap, so obviously they're not coming. And I'm saying, well, the fear was at a 10.
Yeah.
The fear was up to 11, so we freaked out and closed the border. And guess what? Nobody came across. And so that was, unfortunately, that was a moment where the economy was bad, but also the fear was bad because you, like you, Nate, with your facts and your statistics. Like
I know, I'm the worst.
To me, I was like, well, again, like read the people, read their, like what's going on in their minds, and that is kind of what I see. But look at the very end here, and you see these apprehensions drop. And like I said the other day, like Tom Hammond was talking about. Here we go. Here's the next one.
Yeah. So this chart here includes once Trump's into office, and you see that bad boy bottom out. That's the Trump era. I mean, you are correct to say, yo, Nate, were the bottoms during Biden or Trump? Enough said. I mean, that is a strong argument.
I mean, now the thing is, like, sometimes the resistance can just be what people think is happening at the border. When people just, oh, Trump's in, obviously it's going to be harder.
Yeah, that's right. Narrative alone counts. You're right about this.
And so that has a lot to do with it. But now the economy's just starting to recover, inflation's finally starting to, like,
cool
the
out,
price of eggs is at least reasonable again. Like, that seems to be a metric that a lot of people are holding to. So we'll see how this holds up. But like you said, if Trump can maintain numbers close to this, I think the Republicans will have a very good midterm and they'll sweep 2024.
This gets back to what we started talking off about, which is Trump makes the biggest immigrant baby face turn midway through. He came in a heel. He came in as the final boss. He came in with the people's elbow. And then by year 2026, 2027, he turns into Cody Rhodes, the American nightmare, kissing babies, handing out jackets. He becomes the most beloved president in brown American history. I think that's on the table.
Because if he can, because whatever the number is, let's be frank. I joked about this back in 2016 when he was running. He's like, here's the thing: Trump doesn't need to build a full wall. He just needs enough of a wall that when there's a camera in front of him and it pans left and it pans right, you can't see where the wall ends. That's it. He just needs that shot. Like, and look at this glorious wall. It goes as far as your camera shot can pan in either direction. It's a glorious wall. And so he just needs enough of the bad elements out. Like, whether you say it's 900, it could be 300,000, could be, it could be the population of Hastings or like Grand Island, Nebraska. We don't know what that number is.
That's right.
But like, it's sort of like in any organization, it's what I call the Pareto principle. The Pareto principle, I'm sure you're familiar, but like
80-20s.
Yep, 20% of the people in your organization are responsible for 80% of the output. Well, I imagine that applies to the bad folks too.
I think you're right.
And so that once you get that just right number where people can actually start to see, like, hey, things are peaceful and people aren't getting harmed in any way, and there isn't crime, and like, yeah, if Trump can in any way kind of claim some sort, because, like, dude, you and I been talking about illegal immigration our whole lives. I mean, Nate, it's sort of what you do.
It is what I do.
Okay, like, and if Trump could just say, I just solved the problem and now we just do it, like, now amnesty, that's going to be all right for the three parts of the party here. Okay, the American First, the anti-secular, the working class, and then the three leaders of the party, the techno-oligarchs, the neocons, and the peaceniks. I've kind of charted those down. So, all right, let's look at amnesty. The peaceniks, they're going to be kind of ambivalent to it. Like, there'll be some that'll be for, some that'll be against. The neocons, they will be 1,000% for it. They will be falling over themselves. They will be shedding tears of joy. Bandit evening, ladies. Howdy, Bandit. The techno oligarchs, I think, will be
for it.
the Musks of the world, the Vivek
Yeah.
Ramaswamis of the world, like, yeah, they're
They're
going to
just
definitely
they're
now.
licking their chops. They want that cheap labor, Phil.
So the peaceniks are the only pushback, but they're going to be somewhat ambivalent of it at the leadership end. But the voter end, that's where it gets fun. Your
Yeah.
three groups here: your anti-secularist. That I'm just putting it as that anti-secularist. Your working class and your America Firsters.
America First and working class people are going to have big problems.
Oh yeah, they're gonna be like, wait, what the
This is not what we voted for.
We voted you in just to give amnesty? That's not what we vote. The anti-secularists also they might be kind of like the peaceniks where they're ambivalent about it.
Well,
Where
if they're Catholic, they love it because half their congregations are these illegal immigrants. So
yes, the wider concerns of the creedal Christians, Nate.
that's right. The creedal Christians love the immigrants. They got to.
Now, for those who don't know, within the sound of my voice, that's apparently what Mormons refer to. Well, the rest of us, creedal Christians.
Right. Know your role.
I just thought that was too funny. First time I read that, like, yep. I know Nate's heard that term once or twice.
That's right. It's all
now,
over Mormon Twitter right now. Fights between these cultish Mormon folks and these creedal Christians. It's pretty funny.
I do enjoy watching those. Those are one of my favorite. His name is Lego Joseph Smith.
Oh yeah,
he's actually pretty funny. But anyway, so here's the problem: is the party leadership is going to think, hey, this is a great idea. The voters are going to be like, nuh-uh. And suddenly the Republicans are in the problem that the Democrats are in right now.
Well, I wouldn't go that far because I think, kind of like you said, a lot of this has to do with trust, Phil. I think a lot of this has to do with trust. I think that a non-trivial number of working class people, especially if Trump is able to fully get the 20%, to borrow your Pareto principle, if they can get the 20% of the baddies out, reestablish trust with the executive, I don't actually think that folks are nativist in terms of, I don't want foreigners in my country. I think they want to know that their government isn't so incompetent that people are coming across haphazardly, stealing jobs, causing problems, right? If the trust is restored, if Trump truly declares mission accomplished and restores trust with the electorate and the American people, then he can do the babyface turn and he's fine. To your point, though, Phil, what happens if a heel turns babyface and the audience isn't ready? Let's go ask Roman Reigns how that bad boy turned out. Right?
Yeah,
even ask The Rock. He wanted to come in as a babyface last year to WrestleMania, and the people said, that's not it, Jack. And so you're exactly right to say, in order for the babyface turn to happen, Trump has to win back the trust, and the electorate has to really, really trust the administration if that's going to happen. And I can tell you today, that trust does not exist. He's not there yet. But if he's hyper successful, I think he could. And I think he will, unless the economy gets so good that it just starts to suck people back in again, and then you can't do it.
Now, the big problem here is the biggest hump that you got to get over here is the America First crowd, because I can tell you exactly how they talk. All right. And like, this is exactly if you came into this country illegally in any way, that is a violation of our laws. And so you are part of that criminal element. And so you need to be expelled as well. And they don't really draw
Let's do a deal, Phil. Let's do a deal right now. Here I am. I will be the techno bros on this one.
Okay.
Let's cut a deal. You're right. There needs to be a penalty. Expulsion is on the table. We can make them leave and then come back in. Do it the right way the second time through. That's a possibility. What about this? What about a variation on the $5 million gold card? And instead of a gold card, we call it a teal card. And this is for the working class poor in America. They've been here for 20 years. They don't need to pony up $5 million, but they need to pony up $15,000. Right? You got to pay a penalty. And by the way, under criminal law in the state of Nebraska, a $15,000 fine would put you at a class 2 felony. So you pay a class 2 level felony level of fine as your penalty for having screwed us up, and that money goes straight to paying down the debt. Phil, start doing the numbers. What's 15,000 times 10 million?
Oh, you're gonna make me do math? Come on, bro. All right. 15,000 times 10 million is let's see. $150 billion.
All right. So you can take your 150 billion and you can dump it straight into the national debt. You could point it at America First policies. Make them pay for it. You could also shut off and say, you know what? We'll let you be legal, never a citizen. Right? There's a lot of things you could do to try to make it and to continue to have the trust of the American people, where you say they'll never be citizens, they'll never vote, they'll never draw a Social Security check. They're never going to do any of those things, but they can have a driver's license. And as long as they don't get any DUIs, they don't commit any crimes, we won't deport them. And they can travel home to see mama on Christmas. And that's it. They pay the penalty. They live the rules. They can never vote. We're money. Now, I'm just saying there's a way you could construct this bad boy that even the America First boys and go, all right, I get it. Yeah, that's a pretty good deal for us. That's pretty good.
Leave it to a lawyer to find a great mediation. Okay, let me say, but well, now, Nate, this is something I want you to like. I'm not even saying this is my counter to your but I want you to just keep this in your mind. I remember I read this in a book when I was younger. I believe it was called Inheriting the Wind. Maybe it was wrong title, but it was about folks that were illegally immigrating to the United States. And at one point they were asked after they had been apprehended, and this was a question they were asked, and I've been wrestling with it for many, many years. And they asked, because they were applying for citizenship, and they said, can we honestly expect, if your foundational act within our borders was a violation of our laws, for you to be a good citizen? And it was one of those that I've wrestled with because I've always tried to find that third way, like you're trying to find, Nate. But then that's something I always remember in the back of my mind. Is so, unfortunately, with the America Firsters, as it's sort of like the Palestinians under Yasser Arafat. It doesn't matter how good of a deal you give them; it's not good enough. Do you see? That's one thing that I know that's one hell of a comparison, but
no, I get your point. The point's well taken. Let's think through this together, Phil. I like the phrase. I like that. A good trebuchet would, in fact, be worth the $15K. I like that.
Bandit goes, 2024 is the closest to babyface Trump America's going to see. And he didn't know Mormons.
That could be. Yeah, no, that's right. We should have a theological conversation one day, Phil.
I'd love it.
Okay. No, let's think through this really quick. So, I'm a big believer in the phrase "forgive but verify." So your point is well taken, where you say, hold on a minute. If your foundation is a sin, how do we confirm repentance? Because to your point, I think, if we're just being super honest, it'll probably be 80-20 again. 80% will do great, and they'll make me look great. And then 20% will still rape, pillage, and who knows do what else, right? So how can we both forgive and verify? We live in such an interesting age, Phil, that you could conceive of a technological way to increase verification on some of these folks. So imagine this. Imagine we have them waive their right to searches and seizures. So if you want to do this deal and we think that you're being naughty in your home, we don't got to go to a judge. Oh, how about this? What if we actually have everybody pre-sign their own deports? So you get the card, you pre-sign your own deport, so that if you cross a line with us, no more lines, no more due process. You, as a consenting adult, waive those rights so that if we catch you being naughty through AI or personal check-ins or something to that effect, we'll send you right on the F home. And there won't be this, stand in line 7 years for a deportation. We'll just send you on the next plane and you're gone. Forgive and verify, Phil. Forgive and verify. That's what I'd say, because I think you're right. How do you forgive and verify? Because that's what you need. You got to have some trust. The money helps, but that doesn't build trust. I can cut you a check. That doesn't bring trust back. If anything, makes you feel like a whore. Makes you feel like, oh, you guys just think you can pay me off for all your bad behavior. That's an indulgence. It's anti-Christian.
I've been used. No one will want to marry me now. Yeah, exactly. But I that actually, I'll be honest, I have some misgivings, but that's actually more palatable to me than your previous plan. If that makes
Well, yeah,
sense,
that's
where
hey,
it's
we're
like
reasoning together, Phil. We're reasoning together.
it's like now again, I'm like the working class folks in your they'll be on board with that. Your anti-seculars, like I said, they're ambivalent, so you'll probably win them over. The America Firsters, that's one of those you just keep chipping away at it, even
That's it, baby. I'm
like
just looking for a win.
but so like yeah, where they sign basically, for lack of better terms, a contract with the United States government.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it
Saying that
waives
like
and
okay,
it waives a bunch of their rights. Yeah.
and then eventually like yeah, some sort of path to citizenship there. Like I'm open to all of that. I'm not as hardlined as a lot of the folks on the far right on it, because like I'll be honest with you, like this is between you and me, Nate, okay? Like
Yeah.
we're not
Nobody
getting into
else
a
is listening.
theological
It's just
discussion,
us.
but it ties in. Since I came to Christ, the one political thing that has changed in my mind, because if I, if all of my worldly politics just matched one for one afterwards, that would be somewhat suspicious. Okay, like I'll be honest. But the one that I softened on quite a bit was immigration. And the one thing that I remember is, I don't know if you remember this, but there was this family that was on the other end of this razor wire. And this guy, I forget what kind of agent he was, and he cut the razor wire. And on Twitter, I was very disappointed to see a lot of people on the right going, that guy's a traitor. He needs to go to prison for cutting that. And my thought was, would Jesus have cut that razor wire? Or do you think he would have just let those poor people crawl through it for whatever principle that you're wanting to uphold here? Okay. And so that's my thought. Like, yeah, you cut the freaking razor wire. Okay. Like that was where I had sort of a shift, is like, we're all made in God's image here, and so let's try to treat each other like that. And so, and one guy was like, "Yeah, I don't care. We don't owe these people anything." It's like, well, if that's the case, we don't owe them cruelty either. Okay, and so
Yeah.
that's and
Well,
so
Phil, you're kind of insinuating this without saying it, but an excess of America first does lead us down to some dark holes. I mean, it's just true. There's an extreme wing of America first that doesn't sit great with me.
I've been
And
picking that up from what you've been throwing down these last few months.
Yeah. I've been more intense on Twitter than I'm in real life. That's my playground for ideas, right? So saying intense things is what I'm all about online. But I am concerned. There is a group. I don't even think it's Pareto. I think it's much smaller. I think it's about 5 to 7% of the Make America Great Again coalition that really does have what I would call some misplaced beliefs about race, some misplaced beliefs about human dignity. And on the immigration topic, it sort of manifests itself. Like I've been concerned, Phil, about something like this. If a green card holder supports Hamas verbally, I'm not talking about materially, there's no money, they're not raising funds, they're not recruiting people, but they just say, I freaking hope that the Gazans and Hamas wins the war. If those words are spoken, I don't like our government targeting that person, Phil. I don't like it. Now, I understand America first. I understand a lot of our Jewish brothers and sisters are feeling very attacked for good reason, because they have been attacked, right? Like there's a lot of good reasons why that is the most disgusting kind of speech you could imagine. But in my mind, first comes rights, because those come from God, and then comes government. And I believe this very deeply, that God in heaven has given us a freedom of speech, and it is illegitimate for governments to curtail that speech unless very extreme kind of situations. And I don't think that we've reached that threshold, but there is a bloodlust on some of MAGA right to say, no. If you're not a citizen, you get no rights. Phil, that to me sounds a little bit like not everybody is inside of God's sovereignty. And that bugs. I do not like that. And I'm not for that. I think that first come rights, because they came from my maker. And then my government, which is also instituted of God. I mean, Mormons, we're a big believer that like we're not anarchists, okay? We're not anarcho-Christians, although that'd be a fun topic for another day. But I do believe that governments can and should curtail some of our rights in certain situations, because we live in a fallen world. It's just the way things work. But to say that the non-citizen is out of the reach of God's given rights to man, that doesn't sit right with me. And a lot of people on Magistan are like, citizens have, or non-citizens have no rights. I'm like, oh, then you think rights come from government. You don't think they come from our maker. You think they come from government. And frankly, that's gross. America first, taking the place of God first, that's a problem. I'm not saying that's what everybody's doing, but there's this small segment. I don't know, man. They certainly sound that way. It makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I've always kind of made a project of myself is like wherever I see like some sort of overt racism on the right, I generally try to purge that. Like it's wherever possible, because like you said, like we're all made in God's image here. And when you talk about rights, like where do they come from? Is it from God or government? You do bring up that very interesting point of like you are kind of conceding that your rights come from government there. Now, I'm not at all familiar with this guy. Like I heard he was a green card holder and he got deported for saying something, apparently.
Yeah.
But that's the extent that I know. I've got a screaming baby upstairs, so
we should probably wrap this up. My boys are knocking at the door too. We probably
okay, all righty. Well, here's the problem, Nate. You and I can talk endlessly.
Yes, and we should.
Yes. Now, all right. Couple of things. Before we close out here, I will say that you are correct on there is an element of the far right in MAGA that needs to be watched closely and see, like, because like there's that very dangerous end of the left.
I don't want to
like
overstate
and stuff.
No, I'm with you. I don't want to overstate. I actually think that for far too long, the left has libeled the right and made it to sound like Mitt Romney belonged to these groups. I mean, that's insane, right? Like that's nuts. I'm not saying that we're in a bad place, but there are some vibes coming out of a small chunk of Magistan that makes me uncomfortable. Small chunk, very small.
I've noticed. Now, Nate, before we go, I just want to say, I would like to speak with you again in the future on a couple of things. Again, of course, politics is always good. Also, I would like to get you. We do need to have a theological discussion because I think that would be.
I need to be called to repentance, Phil. You might be the one.
No. Repent! Like we both keep yelling at each other and saying repent for an hour, and that's it.
That's right. Your pastoral duty is to call me to repentance.
Repent, you heretic! Like, oh yeah, this is fun. But we need to do that sometime. And then also, Nate, I've been wanting it for a long time. I want your magnum opus on OJ. We're one of these days we're doing that. You're like, oh Phil, thank you so much for making me touch on a hot button issue. That's so nice of you. And this year of our Lord 2025, that's never a problem. Now, unfortunately, I'm sorry, Nate, we never got to this chart here.
Yeah, this is actually a very misleading graph. I need to clean this one up. But this just says not a US citizen. This is by age. So there are from 35 to 39-year-olds, there's over 3 million immigrants in that age range. So this is just age range. And you can see the people who are crossing are predominantly people in the prime working ages. I know that there's been a lot of chit chat about like, oh, well, people are coming over in their battle ages. Well, if you look, there are just as many 20 to 24-year-olds as there are 50 to 54-year-olds. The real cohort that is crossing over and is coming to the United States are people in their mid-30s reaching the prime working age years. They're coming to work, man. That's what they want.
That's been my experience, anywho. And then, just
this is inflation. I do think that immigrants have something to do with inflation. I've heard some complaints that like this, JD Vance has been on this about how housing costs go up because of migrants. I think that is true. However, we also see that inflation has a bunch of possible different trajectories in the future, and actually having a drop off in the labor pool does bring costs down, but it comes at the cost of growth.
Yeah. And just real quick, Bandit's kind of touching on like the difference between like human rights and legal rights, and like, that is a distinction to talk about.
And Bandit, to your point, I mean, this is actually a very good point. What we could do then is we could actually make a list of what are our God-given rights and which rights actually pop up out of the social construct. Because as you're kind of insinuating here, inside of a democracy, I don't think that God only believes that democracies are the only form of government that could work. So I don't believe that the right to vote is a God-given right, because I do believe that you could live in a monarchical situation, or like the French Republic for a while had committees. Like there are different government arrangements that I think that God would be okay with, assuming that they are living under the principles of righteousness, right? And so if you make that assumption, so you are correct. That particular right may not fall into the God-given category, because if you lived in a good, godly king's kingdom and you didn't have the right to vote, I don't think you could stand up and shout, no, God gave me the right to vote. You must be a democracy. So it's well said, Bandit. I don't think that every right that we have as Americans is God-given. We should qualify it that way. That's a fair point.
Yeah. And just what was this chart about, real quick?
Oh, this was okay. There's been some concern that one of the things that happens with high amounts of immigration is you see a decrease in wages. So even though we had this huge uptick in immigrants, we also had a huge uptick in growth in salaries and wages at the exact same time. Now you could tell me it would have been even bigger without the migrants. That's fair, but I just want to say it didn't cause damage. It might just have taken the top off of, I guess, of some of the highest possible wages. But the wage, you can see this. The wages were going up as the immigrants were coming. The wages attract the immigrants, right? They're not really suppressing them very much, if at all, in my opinion. So that was just the last little piece on this, because people talk about this. And look, wage growth is decelerating now, and migrants are stopped coming. Like, that kind of tracks with my whole theory. But now, thank you, Phil.
No problem. Nate, I do appreciate you coming by. And one last thing I want to say from something you said earlier is, if we fractured into multiple Nebraskas, 2 Nebraskas, sure, that might not be good for our defense of the state, but in the Senate, we would get 4 senators, which to me would be hilarious. I'm sorry. It's like, now, actually, unfortunately, one of them would probably be a Democrat. So,
it depends on what Eastern Nebraska does, right? Well, to your point, I think if more Nebraskans were in D.C., we'd be in less of a mess. That's just my experience.
Well, Nate, please tell the folks if and where they can find you and everything, all that good stuff, good sir.
You can find me on Phil K.O.E. coming to you soon. I'm also on Twitter at @Nathan Dallon. My tag is confirmation bias. That's actually beware confirmation bias. Beware confirming your own biases. That's mostly for myself. I'm on constant notice that I should not be confirming my own biases, because I have them.
Well, Nate, again, thank you, good sir, for swinging by. If you stick around, just kind of watch in the background, I actually have an interview that my grandpa did back in 2013 that I just found, and I'm going to play that for the folks here. So
that's great.
Also have that for my uses. But sir, I do appreciate your time. I do appreciate your expertise and your analysis. You're a busy man, so and you, much like me, we both have families and children, and I got a 4-month-old, and that's
all right. You ready for mine? 10, 9, 6, and 18 months. Those are my 4 boys.
4 boys. No girls yet?
No girls yet.
Still,
we'll see. Yep. I'm getting old, Phil. Getting old. I'm not quite to that 40 mark, but I'm close.
How old are you?
I'm 39 as of a couple days ago. 3 days ago.
Okay. I turned 40 in October, so we're actually not that far apart. So
we're old millennials together, as it should be.
Yep. The last haircut I got, because I let my hair get really long, suddenly it was like, oh, wow, I'm super gray. Whoa, what happened, man? Like, that's even my daughter's like, Dad, what happened? Like, time, kid. That's what happened. Nate,
fear not, it's coming for you too, honey.
Thank you. Yes, but all right. Now, folks, always remember, he is the finest attorney in all immigrationness. If basically he could find a way to get a Martian his citizenship late tonight or early tomorrow morning. That's how good he is. The one, the only, Nate Dallon. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Love you.
God bless.